All right, so last class we kind of talked through the steps. So first step, isolate the radical. What does that mean? Get it by itself. Then we inverse the radical. So what undoes a square root? A square. Then you continue solving, and then lastly, check for extraneous solutions. So we're going to skip to number 5. So first of all, is the radical isolated? Is the radical by itself on one side of the equation? Yeah, so we go straight to step 2, which is inverse the radical. So a square root gets undid by squaring it. But if you square the left side, you have to square the right side. So the square root and the square cancel out. That leaves us with 3x plus 18. But what does the right side become? X squared. Now, what did I tell you earlier in the warm-up about do we want to move the x squared to the left, or do we want to move the 3x and the 18 to the right? Yeah, we want x squared to be positive if at all possible because it makes our factoring easier. So I'm going to bring both of these, I'm going to subtract them to the right, which gives me a 0 on the left. And this becomes a negative 3x minus 18. So ultimately, we end up getting a quadratic. So a times c, what factors of negative 18 add up to negative 3? Which one's negative? Because one of them has to be negative to multiply to give us a negative number. Negative 6 plus 3. But those aren't my answers, those are my factors. How do I get my answers? 7 equals 0, so our answers are x equals 6 and x equals negative 3. Now, don't circle your answers yet. Wait till you check and see if they work before you circle it. That will hopefully help remind you to do so. Now, on the test, the directions will say, check for extraneous solutions. So it's not going to be an I gotcha, but you have to remember to do it, okay? So now, let's get out our calculators, and this is good practice to kind of evaluate using our calculator. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to type in the original equation, but I'm going to plug in both of my answers. So which one do you want to start with first? Let's try 6 first. So I'm going to type in the square root of 3 times, we're plugging in 6 for x, so I'm going to put a 6, plus 18. Now, what should that equal if it works? What do we say x is for this problem? 6. We're currently testing 6, right? So if it equals 6, we know we did it right. So hit enter, and we get 6. That equals x. So that is correct. You can circle that answer. And then now we just need to try the other one. So shortcut, if you hit second enter, it will give you that back. And then all you need to do is go back and change that 6 to a negative 3 plus 18. Now this time, what should I get? Negative 3. Because that's, if we're saying x is negative 3, well, if I'm saying this x is negative 3, that also means this x needs to be negative 3. So when I hit enter for the left side, it should equal the right side. So hit enter, and what do you get? You got positive 3. So make sure you typed it in right. Is that negative 3? No. We said x needs to be negative 3, but the calculator is telling me the left side equals positive 3. So that is an example of an extraneous solution. So what I'll do is I'll cross that one out, say does not equal. And if you want to be really obvious, which isn't a bad thing, label it as extraneous. I know it's a big word. Someone last semester always called it extraneous. Sounds a little weird. So on number 6 is very similar to the problem that he just did. So I'm not going to do the whole thing. But this radical on the left is isolated, right? It's by itself. So we're going to square it. But this is where most people mess up. If I square the entire left side, what do I have to do? You have to square the entire right side. Or sorry, right side, left side. So not each part of it. You have to square the whole side. Which means you need to throw parentheses around this whole thing and square it. Now, what does it mean for x minus 2 to be squared? Do what? It needs to be FOILed. Is that what you're thinking? So x minus 2 squared is x minus 2 times x minus 2. And the square root and the square cancel out, so I'm just left with 2x minus 1 on the right. And then from there, you would FOIL this out. You get x squared minus 4x plus 4. Subtract these two x's to the left to combine your like terms, add this one to the left, and then do a bottoms-up factoring to find your solutions. And then don't forget to find check if there's any extraneous. Just so you know, your answer should be 5 and 1, but 1 does not work. 5 does. So you can finish that one off on your own, or if you already did it, you can check your answer there. First of all, are either of these square roots isolated right now? No. I need one of the square roots to be isolated so I can square that one square root. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add this entire square root over to the right side. It's all one term. It's minus the square root of x minus 4, so I can plus the square root of x minus 4 to the right. So these cancel. Equals, and now the right side is the 2 that was already over there, plus the square root of x minus 4. Okay, so now this is the part where it gets a little bit weird. So it's really important to make sure you write nice and neat, or this can get really sloppy. Okay, so now that this square root is isolated, I can square it. And that will for sure cancel out the square root, and I'm left with x plus 8. But if I square the left side, I have to square the right side. The entire side. Not each part of it, but the side as a whole needs to be squared. And that whole thing squared means you need to write it out 2 times and multiply it by itself. So on the left, we have x plus 8 equals. Now this looks pretty rough, but it's not that bad. So we need to FOIL it out. So what is 2 times 2? Good job, proud of you. And then the outer, FOIL, the outer 2 terms is 2 times the square root of x minus 4. So a whole number times a radical is just the whole number times that radical. So plus 2 square roots of x minus 4. Just put the whole number in front. And then what are the middle 2 going to be? If I have to multiply the square root of x minus 4 times 2 again. Same thing. So plus 2 more square roots of x minus 4. Now this last one looks bad. Let me ask you real quick. What is the square root of 4 times the square root of 4? What is the square root of 4 times the square root of 4? Square root of 16, which is 4. So the square root of 4 times the square root of 4, the square root times the square root cancel out, right? Because the square root squared cancels, and you just get the number underneath. So quick questions. What's the square root of 15 times the square root of 15? It's just 15, period. What's the square root of 93 times the square root of 93? It's just 93. What's the square root of x times the square root of x? Just x. So what is the square root of x minus 4 times the square root of x minus 4? Just plain old x minus 4, and the square root cancels out. So this is just plus x minus 4. The square root cancel out, and it just left what's underneath. Now once again, this looks kind of rough, but some stuff's going to cancel out here. Does anyone see something that's going to cancel? The 4s, right? So I have a 4 in front and then minus 4 and back. So bam, bam, you're gone. Yeah, the x's are going to cancel. Do you see how? I have one x over there on the far right, you see it? And one x over here on the far left. Why are those going to cancel? Yeah, because if I combine them across the equal sign, if that's a positive x, you have to subtract x. But if you subtract x from two positive x's, x minus x is 0. X minus x is 0. Those cancel out. So now, what's the only thing left on the left side? 8. I'm going to bring that down here. 8 equals. Now, if I have 2 of something, and then I have 2 more of something, how many of those somethings do I have? I have 4 of that something. So it's just like I would say 2x plus 2x is 4x. Those are actually like terms, because they're both 2 square roots of x minus 4. So you can add them together, and now I have 4 of them. And now it's not looking too bad. So if this is 4 times this, now we're basically back at step 1 again. How do I get the square root isolated? Divide both sides by 4. So this isn't hard, it's just a lot of algebra. Welcome to college algebra. So divide that away. We now have 2 equals the square root of x minus 4. Square the square root, so it's kind of going roundabout, roundabout. We now have 4 equals x minus 4. So what does x equal? 8. All that work. I feel like I went on a carousel. Round and round and round and round we go. Okay, oh, that's a quiz up there. Let's go back to the original problem now and see if our work was worth it. So if you take the left side of this equation and you plug in the number 8 for all of the x's, so 8 plus 8, plus the square root of 8 minus 4. Now some of you are going to see that it is going to work, right? Because what's 8 plus 8? What's the square root of 16? So this first one comes out to 4. Sorry, this is a minus sign in the middle, right? Minus 8 minus 4 is 4, but what's the square root of 4? 2. So yes, that does equal the right side of the equation. So our answer is in fact 8. Give it a circle and take a deep breath because you're done.